Hello, and welcome to Story Behind the Story, where romance readers and authors connect. I'm Reese, author of sexy, emotional romantic fiction featuring lots of family drama, surprising secrets, and a cast of complicated, sometimes messy characters, most of whom are north of 30, which in Romancelandia makes them kind of old, which is a whole different kind of sad that we don't have time to talk about right now. But we're going to talk more about today about romance with couples who are older than the typical 20-something age that most of romance novels feature. So we're going to get into that. And there's been a lot of excitement about discussing this. So I can't wait to get into it with you all. So I'm going to be asking lots of questions, so I encourage you to get those typing fingers ready or text type or whatever you use so that we can have an interactive discussion because you all always make the show. So before we get into that, what's on deck for my next show? I'm actually going to take a hiatus next week because I have a book that I have to finish. And I'll probably take a hiatus like the last week of every month just to make sure that I have some space for any writing issues that come up as they always do for me. But after that, I'm super excited that my guest, I've already posted this, is going to be the incomparable Brenda Jackson. On October the 7th, at my usual time of 7 p.m., we are going to be chatting and discussing her amazing 25-year career as a romance author. She's going to talk about her highlights of her career as well as some challenges. Going to give us romance writers some advice as to how we can have some of that longevity that she has had in her career. We're going to talk a little bit about Brother's Honor, her book that was turned into a movie, and what she has coming up. So definitely you don't want to miss that. That is going to be in 2 weeks on October the 7th, Wednesday at 7 p.m. So I will remind you again at the end so that you can go to that show page and hit the reminder bell. So make sure if you are new here, thank you for joining us and welcome. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe and hit the reminder bell so that you'll be notified of future author talks here on Story Behind the Story. So let's get into this week because we have a lot to discuss and a lot of folks to discuss it. So I want to make sure we have plenty of time to cover everything. So I have a panel of amazing women I'm so excited to have here talking about this topic of romance featuring older characters. And so I'm going to bring them on one by one and have them introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with my buddy, my fellow North Carolina writer buddy who lives pretty locally to here and I miss terribly because of COVID. So welcome to the show, Karen Booth.
It's so weird that we're like half an hour away and we don't get to see each other.
I know, it's terrible. So please tell people if anybody isn't familiar with you. Karen is also a fellow Harlequin Desire author. So yes. If you know me, you probably knew her first. And so
by a little bit.
Please, Karen, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you write.
Okay. Well, I live in North Carolina. I'm a married mom of 2 college-age kids, and I write sexy contemporary romance. I write for Desire, and I also indie publish. And somebody asked me the other day how many books I've put out, and I didn't know the answer, so I counted. And my last book, which came out September 1st, was my 30th.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
Yep. That's me.
Fantastic.
I guess I should also say I'm co-founder of Seasoned Romance.
Yes.
A Facebook reader group, which is for romance. We'd say 35 and older, but it's not like we check IDs. You know?
Yeah, and that's very important and relevant to this conversation. So yeah, we're going to definitely talk more about that as well. So thank you so much for joining us. And then next we have Cheryl Lister. Welcome to the show. And she's been with us before. Yes. So she's coming back to talk about something different. So Cheryl, please tell everybody, who you are and what you write.
I am a Cali girl through and through, live in Sacramento, California, married, will be celebrating 27 years on Friday with my real life hero. Got three beautiful daughters, one son in love, and two rambunctious grandbaby boys. I write sweet, sensual, contemporary romance with heroines who don't take mess and heroes who you'll want as your next book bay.
I love it. And early congratulations to you on the anniversary. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Yes. I got you beat though, because
I know.
I'm at 31.
See, go ahead. Woohoo.
That's pretty awesome. And then next, I'm gonna pull up Suzette D. Harrison.
Hello.
Hello, Suzette.
Hey, good evening. I'm also with Cheryl in Sacramento, California, but I'm at my own house and Cheryl's at hers.
I know. We can't see each other again. Same.
We haven't seen each other since Detroit of last year, which is a shame. But anyhow, I am Suzette. I know. I write, my tagline is decadent fiction, past and present, because I write both historical and contemporary romance, children's literature, women's literature. I am a wife and mother. Reese, I'm tied with you 31 and a half years. 31 years of marriage.
Wow.
Yeah. So thank you, Lord, for that. And that's who I am, wife, mother, writer, baker, Jill of all trades and master of none.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show. And last but certainly not least, we have Lisa Salvery, who is the founder of Romance in Her Prime, another Facebook group that focuses on older heroines. And again, it makes me a little sick to call these heroines older since we're talking about 30, 35. But Lisa, welcome to the show. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you read.
Certainly. Well, thank you for having me, Reese, considering I'm the only one who's not an author. So I am a reader with a group called Romance in Her Prime. And I love the name of your channel. I did want to say that, the Grown Folks Romance. I think that's just perfect. So as I said, I'm Lisa, and my group is Romance in Her Prime, and the emphasis is on her because we focus on heroines age 30 and up. And it's because traditionally romance genre heroines were in their 20s, 18 to 25 was the key. And then if they got up to 29, they were the spinster, the old maid, and they got made fun of, etc. So one of the things I noticed was that often if they did have an older heroine, she was a side character. If they had a book, it would be a novella in the series of novels. They had that one little novella, or it could be like the parents or grandparents story where they were older in the beginning and most of the story was them in their 20s when they were met and they were getting married, and then the end was, hey, and there's with all their grandkids. It's like, well, that really wasn't an older romance. So that got me looking for those characters and trying to see beyond just the 20s. So one of the things, I'm looking at my thing here, right here. So my group includes all of season romance, which is often 40 and up, or sometimes 35 and up. But I started at 30 because it's the first milestone birthday for women. When you've got to start thinking about, the babies, you start thinking about how much time do I have, careers. You can even start perimenopause by the end of, 30s. Think about those issues where men don't have those. And the older heroes have always been part of the romance genre. They've been with much, much younger women, so that's always been covered. But one difference with my group is that being in her prime, if she's 30, she can actually be with a younger hero. So I do include that age gap, the older woman, younger man romance, which can be kind of left hanging there. So she can be in her 30s, she can be in her 40s, and he could be in his 20s, he could be 18 or something, because it's about her and getting in the older woman, younger man, and getting in the heroines from 30 and up, because I think it's the heroines that we have been missing largely from this picture. As well as the mature couples, of course. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I would totally agree with that, because like you said, we've always had these, silver foxes and older dude, with the younger woman and stuff. So I love that you focus on the female protagonist. So awesome. So since, according to what I saw on the RWA website, the average age of romance readers is 35 to 39. Is kind of amazing that the focus of age of romance heroines is in their 20s. and that, you know, that it feels somehow amazing to have a romance heroine that's above 30 or 35 or whatever. So we love our 20 somethings, and we probably all read some 20 something romance, but you know, we want to see ourselves just like anything else. You want to see yourself reflected in a lot of the stories and what have you. So for all of you, just briefly tell me, how long have you been reading romance, and at what point did it become important to you to read stories about more mature characters? And it doesn't matter who goes first.
I mean, I'll start, I guess, since I was first on. I started reading when I was 12, when my cousins let me read their Barbara Cartland books, and I was, you know, both fascinated and a little shocked by things like when men could win women in poker games. You know, the subject matter of some of the books are not great, but anyway, you know, I'm 52. I started writing romance when I was 40. And so that was, I mean, it's funny. So the first book I wrote, the heroine was 40. And it was only because I had just turned 40. And I thought, how cool. And I never really thought about, like, I hadn't fully internalized the age situation in romance. I was just reading, you know, I was just reading Nora and Brenda Jackson and whatever. But I wasn't absorbing, wait a minute, everybody's not my age. And then I wrote that first book, and the heroine was 40, and I had a lot of editors tell me, and agents tell me, you can't write a romance about a 40-year-old woman because she can't have sex in the book. And if she can't have sex, then either it's sweet romance or it's women's fiction. But granted, this was 12 years ago,
Wow.
but
Okay.
but stuff hasn't improved that much. This was 12 years ago. So,
Oh my goodness.
anyway.
I know, right? It makes me just want.
So sex was over at 40?
Makes me want to punch someone. All right, Cheryl, how about you? How long have you been reading romance, and at what point did you just say, okay, I want to read some stories about older heroines?
Okay, well, I've been reading them just like Karen around 12 when I borrowed my mother's. You know, she had all the Harlequins under the thing, and she had a few other things that I probably shouldn't have been reading either. But yeah, those things. But I've only been writing for 6 years, and I was like going back and thinking about this for this conversation. It's like trying to go back and look at my catalog and like, how many heroines do I have under 30? And I really want to say that I think I only have 2. And they were like 28 and 29, you know, around that age.
Right.
They were not like early, but everybody else it's been 30. And so for me, I guess I listened to the readers. They're like, oh, I want to see some older people. And then for me, it became important because romance does not stop at 30. It keeps going. People fall in love at 35 and 45 and 50 and 60, you know. Absolutely. You see those. And so it became important to see people, like she said, people who look like me. So I can attest that, you know, romance still rolls in the 50s. So yeah.
I love it. And I think for me, it's pretty much the same. I can't really think of too many heroines I have that are under 30. And the one I can think of is under 30. Like you said, it's right under 30. Right. And anybody who's younger than that is because it was a continuity and I had to make them whatever age. Right. So, yeah. Okay. So, Suzette, how long have you been reading romance, and at what point did it become important to you to start writing?
Yes, ma'am. Just like my sisters before me, I was in books I should not have been, probably at age 11 and 12. Jackie Collins, and Vic Fry, Valley of the Dolls.
I was trying not to go there, right?
And Victoria Holt, who was nice and sweet and clean for the most part. So I've been reading, you know, romances since then. Excuse me. When I started getting interested in romance, just like Cheryl, I went back for this conversation and kind of looked at my heroines, and I had 2 that were under 30. Everyone else was 32, 35, 40, and my most recent one, 54. And I think that's just kind of like a natural progression of my own interests, wanting to see, as Cheryl said, people that look like me that reflect my sensibilities, and because after a while you get tired of juvenile okie doke. Let me just put that out there. You want to see some maturity, and you want to see some growth and some gravity. Not that everyone has to be serious, but after a while, I just can't do the crazy for too long, unless it has real purpose. And not to say that everybody under 30 is crazy, do not misquote me, but it's, just a natural progression of your own self and your own maturity. You want to reflect that in your writing as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Lisa, what about you? How long have you been reading romance, and at what point did you focus on, I'd like to read more romance with older characters?
I can't say I was reading romance when I was younger. Like, it might have been a book or two in between, but I was reading a lot of mystery. I was reading a lot of other books, so I wasn't really focused on that. I'm going to blame Amazon.
Yeah.
So in 2012, I think it was 2012, 2013, commuting, I had some really long commutes. I was just sick of carrying books. So I was like, I'm not carrying a book. I'm not going to hit my head while I'm holding on to the pole on the train or anything. And so I downloaded the Kindle app, and I have nothing on it. I'm kind of in between. I'm kind of like a temporary job. So I'm like, I'm not really, So when I went on, they had their Amazon Top 100 paid, and they had Amazon Top 100 free. I was like, free? Okay, I'm in. When I went there, what happened was, out of the top 100, about 60% of the titles were romance.
Wow.
And that's how I got stuck, because I was like, okay, they're free. Bang, 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 bang. I'll just grab.
Wow.
As I started to read, then I started to find authors and discover them. So oftentimes it might be the first book in a series might have been the free one. So I'd be like, oh, well, then where's the rest of the series? Let me find out that. And from there, it became, where are they on social media? And so, but Amazon was that when I was filling up my little Kindle app, and I was just like, wow, there's so many different romances. And then, of course, as I was reading them at that time, new adult had been exploding. There was that famous trilogy. And so there's all these. So when I was reading them, I was like, okay, a lot of these are in their 20s. Okay, that's totally fine. But it was like all I was reading was in their 20s. I'm like, okay, that's totally fine. But it's like the same experiences. I'm like, life doesn't end in your 20s, so there must be some more. And then what happened was, a couple in between, by accident, I got one she was in her 40s. I was like, where'd this sneak in from? And then there was one when she was 30. I was like, wait, hold on. There are some. But it was so few and far in between. Even when, let's say, an author's page or a blogger, it would be just by chance. It would be like, oh, wow. Okay, here's one. Here's another one. Even if it said second chance, they might have met at 10, and now they're, 20. So it's a second chance. I'm like, okay. So in trying to find them, because I wanted more of a range. It wasn't to eliminate the 20s, but that was so easy. That was just, I didn't have to look. But to find the other ones, I was like, okay, you know what? As I'm starting to find them, there must be other people wanting to look. And that's where the group started. I'm like, I can start picking them out. I'm going to throw them in. And then maybe other people have some. And maybe from there, we will all be able to, to find some and make that market. So maybe it'll make it more palatable and maybe financially, good for authors, to get readers for their books. So that's how that started. But it really was, I had all these books. It was all around roughly the same age. And it would just be once in a while, there was an older one. It was just like, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm reading 30. I found something in their 50. It was like the experiences were just broader. They had different stories. And it was like, wow.
Yeah. And I'm like you. I'm always jealous of people who have these cool stories of borrowing their mom's romances and stuff. I don't have stories like that. I always have been a reader. I was always the reader in my house. I always read everything. I didn't start reading romance proper until I had written my first book that I was going to start subbing or submitting, and then I was in a readers group, and I was just, because I actually considered it kind of chick lit, which is why probably my stuff probably kind of has a women's fiction chick lit kind of feel to it, whatever. And it was the guys in my critique group who were like, this is romance. And I'm like, and that's actually what made me start reading romance proper, open the entire world up to me. So I probably have only really been reading for 10 years myself. So I was already, like you said, older, because I'm 50 now. I'll turn 50 this year. And so it has always been more my interest. I have read a lot of young stuff. I did read a lot of new adult. And I think that also kind of made me want to read more mature stuff, even more, reading a bunch of new adults. So before I ask the next question, I'm going to turn the question to readers. Do you read romance with older characters? Why or why not? And I know that, majority of you who are here probably do. We probably have an interest in it, but I know there are people too who are like, no, I don't want to see no old people together or whatever. I used to be that young person who was like, who thought, I remember being like 16 or whatever and thinking 21 was old. So,
yeah, that's true.
So, so I get that. So we want to hear either way. And also I wanted to say hello to a lot of people who have said hello to us. So Janet Nye has said hello. Rhea Alexis said hello.
Hey, Rhea.
Mama Tony.
Hey,
Hello.
Mama Tony.
And Lisa Marshall is with us. Hello.
Hi, Lisa.
Linda Culbertson.
Hey, Linda.
Caitlin.
Hey to everybody.
Caitlin. Mama Tony says older means me. I heard that. And everybody, we have just I'm looking at something and it's cracking me up. Sorry. And I'm like trying to catch up and on the comments, and I'm like thinking back, like what was being said when they said that. So like in the comments, tell us if you read older romance or what have you. And I just want to read some of their comments. So Jan says, at 60, it's ridiculous for me to write 20-somethings. Their entire world and life experience is so different than mine.
That's true.
Yeah. And Caitlin says, I started reading romance in my teen years and I have been reading it ever since. Linda Culbertson says, first love is fun and all, but you grow so much smarter as you age. I get tired of reading 21-year-olds with no life experience, marrying millionaires who live everywhere.
Wow.
That's a good point. It's like, okay, what are y'all talking about? No, not saying you can't be interesting and all that kind of stuff, but I get that. I get that. So a lot of people saying that they read older, which is great because we all write older. Fantastic. So why do you all feel it is important to have mature characters represented in romance? And anybody can answer this. Everybody doesn't have to answer it because it's one of those questions that probably one or two people will hit pretty much everything. But why do you feel it's important that we have older characters represented?
Representation. I mean, it's just part of it, I think one thing that really struck me, so I'm the oldest of 5 and I have 2 siblings who are gay, and one of them came out when he came out when he was 22. My sister didn't come out until her mid-30s. And we talk a lot about diverse romance, but it's, so if we're getting outside this little cookie cutter of white 25-year-olds, we need to look at what people's real life experiences are like.
Right.
Especially in that situation, not everyone's out living their best life at 22 years old. There's also lots of young people who, have burdens or whatever. So, or obstacles that don't let them find love until later in life. Sometimes you just don't meet the right person. But I think we all want to see ourselves on the page at some point. And I just think that's a big part of it.
I would agree. Anyone else want to contribute on that one?
Just saying, just like you said, I think it's important, and I'd love to see it because, like you said, we have those life experiences, and that the romances, they are mature. That there's not a whole lot of the back and forth, the push and pull. You kind of know what you want, you know what you're looking for, and that's important to see because you look around. We look at folks now. Not everybody, like you said, not everybody's married at 25. Some people are getting their careers straight first. They're waiting and getting married older, and it could be the second time around, for divorce, widow, whatever. But that doesn't mean it's like, oh, my one chance is over now. I got married that once and now, so no, I can't look anymore. And it's like, I want to show that, that yes, you can. I have an aunt and an uncle. I just it was so wonderful to watch their love story, and they were both, older. They were like 50s, late 50s, rolling up to 60, and just cute. So it was just like, that still happens.
Yes. Yeah.
No, it's
Absolutely.
sweet.
One thing I was going to say is nobody questions if a teenager or a 20-something writes a book about a teenager or 20-something, because it just kind of makes sense.
Right.
You write what you know, you write your age group, and that makes sense. But why everybody expects that every other age group is going to write the same age group? So, oh, you're 30, 40, 50, 60, we're all writing that same age group. Well, you know what? Why it makes sense that, if you're at different ages, you might want to write different, of your age or even older, and just, adding to that experience. But it's just like how it's assumed, okay, they're 20-something, so they're going to write 20-something. But why wouldn't you take that same logic to the different ages? As people age, they might want to, change that. So I think it's important. The bulk of our population is older, is over 30, is 30 and up, right? At any particular time, and we're living longer, and we have people living to 100. So think about it, 30 to 100 is quite full, and the 18 to 29 is a small little bit. So, just to me makes sense. You have a lot of people looking for different stories about people that are their similar age, or maybe older, a bit younger, that range. So I think it just makes sense. It's, population, readers, ages, things like that.
Absolutely. And Summer Reese made a good point. As my kids get older, new adult is harder for me to read. Makes a lot of sense. I have a 31-year-old son. So, that makes a lot of sense.
And it's the same thing with writing. I mean, I have a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old. I don't want to write a sex scene with 21-year-olds.
Right.
So I can't get in that headspace if there's So, and it just doesn't work for me. And it's got to work for the writer, or else it's not going to work for the reader.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Karen B, not Karen Booth, says I'll be 62 next month. And I find older characters are more interesting, more layered, more complicated, more engaging than new adults and young adults. And like I said, I totally get that. And at the same time, I remember hearing someone, either I read it, a comment, or somebody made the comment that, that they didn't like older romance because they figured, okay, with romance, you have to have conflict. And if you're over 30, you should have your shit figured out. And I'm thinking to myself, honey, for real?
How old is this person?
Exactly. I'm like, because that's not how this works at all. So like so many people are still trying to find themselves later in their lives. And for some people, it might be whatever the reason was, a bad relationship, a super conservative, religious parents, whatever it might have been, that you didn't kind of really get who you were until you were older. That happens all the time. I don't know how to tell you, sweetie. So for a lot of people, they're not only finding, love again, or love for the first time, even, later on in their lives, they might be finding themselves as well. So you can still have very interesting, varied stories.
Absolutely.
With older people. So it's just kind of ridiculous to think that you cannot do that. So here's my next question that I will ask all of you. Who do you think is doing a better job of responding to the growing reader demand for seasoned romance? Traditional publishers or indie publishers? This time I'm going to start first with Suzette.
Why?
My bad. And that's a question to the readers too. Readers and a lot of readers probably don't really pay attention to who's publishing the books. If they like a book by Brenda Jackson or Karen Booth or Reese Ryan or whatever, they might not even pay attention to whether it's a Harlequin book or a Grand Central book or an indie book. But if you do pay attention, viewers as well, who do you think is doing a better job of answering that call, of responding to diversity in age as well?
I can
traditional or indie. See, yes. I bought you some time.
You did. Doesn't mean my answer is going to be any better, but I can only speak for what I have noticed myself. And of course, I would go with the indie author, because indie authors have control and they're able to do what they, essentially what they want to do, write about who they want to write about and how. But saying that, I also put a pin in it and acknowledge publishers such as Rose Gold Press, who just released This Time Always with a 54-year-old heroine. Not only is she 54, she has alopecia. She's completely bald. And they took a huge risk in putting this bald 54-year-old woman on the cover. So when you have presses like that are willing to take risks, you can only take your hats off to them and celebrate that. But for me, being a kind of like a hybrid author, I am primarily indie. I'm going to write whatever age I want to write about and whatever I want to, without fear of someone telling me it's not acceptable, your audience won't go for it, et cetera, et cetera. I have a certain kind of liberty.
See, you nailed it with the going first. Okay. And we should also mention that Rose Gold Press is owned by authors, one of which is Cheryl Lister, who's sitting here now. And I also have a Rose Gold story coming out next year. So, okay. And so let's go to Cheryl and ask next. Who do you think?
Okay, before we start, I just want to say that it was not a risk to put the book out, Suzette, because it's a fabulous story, regardless of the age and regardless of the alopecia. She is an amazing and character.
It's a beautiful cover.
So y'all get the book. So y'all go ahead and get the book.
Beautiful cover.
So go ahead on and get the book, because the story, what's between the pages is even better than the cover.
Thank you.
Okay. For me, yes, as being completely hybrid, I still would have to say it's the indie. That is a little bit more, like Suzette said, have control, because like me, I've just started a new series called My Sassy Seasoned Sisters, and they're all 53 years old. And I'm finding that I'm loving watching this because and writing it, because hey, I can listen to my music now. I can get the stuff that I like to have in here. I don't have to ask my my 34-year-old daughter, be like, hey, what song would they say for this? My 25-year-old, what song would they, who would they listen to? But it's hard, because I do remember earlier in my career, I think one of my first couple of books, it was like, I remember seeing like a guideline that the heroine had to be, 25 to 29. The heroes could be 35 and up. I'm like, well, why the heroine can't be 35 too? The guys, like you said, they had more latitude with their ages, and we had to stay in this little bitty box. So I still don't see a lot of it happening. But like I said, most of my Harlequin books, everybody, I think my hero 33, 32, I mean, they were in their 30s. So I think maybe it's starting to transition. We're getting the wall up to 30, let's say. We're getting up to the early 30s. So it would be nice now, like you said, to see that we can get more of those 35, 40, 45, and 50s, because obviously readers want to see them.
And Karen, I'm gonna ask you because you have definitely had a bad experience with publishers rejecting a story with an older heroine. So what do you think, what are some of your thoughts about how readers can make it known to traditional publishers that they want to see some more older heroines in their lineups?
I don't really know how readers get that message across to publishers, because we're talking about something that isn't present in the marketplace. So it's not like they can, vote with their wallet, or they can, it is going to take, I think, a breakout book with a real meaty romance with a heroine and a hero who are in their 40s or 50s, and have it reach a broad range of people. I think that's going to be what it's going to take, because otherwise there's just not really, I don't know, is there a suggestion box for Simon and Schuster? I don't know. I'm guessing not, and it probably have an intern reading it anyway. So, I don't really know how readers would. I think they can talk to us, and we can do our best. I think most readers have access to authors that they like, at least in romance, via Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Yeah. So they can talk to, the authors they like and say, I really like this book and that you wrote, and can you write more like this? That's sort of.
I would agree that definitely it would help to, if there are those books out there that, whether they're indie or whatever, that have older characters that by buying them and supporting them and whatever they do, they follow the lead. It's just like the whole illustrated cover thing,
Right.
One
Right.
did well, and then all of a sudden every
Right.
publisher is scrambling to get these illustrated covers. So yeah, and you can't have in-person events anymore and stuff, but yeah, each publisher does have like some sort of way you can contact them from their website or whatever and let them know what you're looking for or what have you. And then once those things are available, yes, it is important to vote with our wallets to show them, because it's a business. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
For publishers. So and Sandra B says there's a notion in publishing that a woman with life baggage is better fit for women's fiction rather than romance. And I do know that a lot of people, feel like that or whatever. It's just such a weird thing, all the little boxes and stuff, because I do feel like my romance has a lot of like women's fiction feel to it, because the journey of the heroine is always important to me. Family is always important to me. So all of those kind of things. Right. And then I feel like I write too hot for women's fiction and I don't want to tone it down. So, so like I'm just kind of like this mashup rule breaker, and I'm, whatever.
Oh, you have to tone it down for women's fiction? Really? You do?
Well, I always thought that for the most part, it would need to be, I don't know, it's weird. It's like the whole thing with small town and what they normally consider small town is usually not as hot as I normally write. So I'm actually really excited that this book I got coming out in December, they decided to go with calling it steamy small town romance.
Okay.
So like, yeah, that's exactly what I feel like I've been doing that all the time anyway.
Right. Yeah. I just had a quick comment on that indie and traditional, just coming from a reader's point of view. So get a little bit of a different one. To me, how the indie publishers, or I'll say indie authors, are doing better is because they're connecting with their readers. They're taking this opportunity that social media has offered, and many of them connect with their readers on social media, on their blogs and websites, and they're finding out from them. They're keeping in contact with them. Sometimes they're asking about, okay, I'm thinking about writing a series about this. What's your feedback on it? How do you think about this? So they're actively working with their target market and growing that market and putting that out there. And I think that shows. So this thing about, I think the connections and getting that feedback is important. Traditional publishers don't look for the feedback. They're looking at the literary agents. They're looking at the authors. They're speaking with editors. They're speaking with marketing companies. They're dealing with, their shareholders and probably investors, right? So they are very, very far away from the reader, and they're really not looking to get. The reader to them represents a number. It's a dollar amount. It's how many books sold. So that's what the reader means to them. So there isn't a connection. I think that's what it is. So I think with traditional, they're looking to dictate what will be the next bestseller. They're chasing after that bestseller. They're looking to play it safe. They want the, just like movie studios and everything. Everyone wants a blockbuster. Everyone wants this author does well all the time, I'll stick with them. This genre does well, this is hot, we'll stick with that. So I think it's the indie authors and the indie publishers that are willing to take a chance. They're willing to see trends in the markets. They see their ages of maybe their readers as they're getting older is changing too. It says, hey, let's try and put this out. Let's try a different cover. Let's do this. Let's do that. But traditional is like, no, we're going to wait. If it works, we're going to jump on it. So I think that's the difference. It's that connection to directly the value of the reader to the indies compared to the traditional who are looking more dollars and cents. I think that's what it is in part.
Yeah.
Thank you. And looking at the comments, most folks, well, it's interesting actually. There's a lot of folks saying, okay, yeah, it's definitely
There's Tasha.
But at the same time, so I'm seeing a lot of people like indies hands down. But then there are a few readers like Mama Tony and Tracy Hale who are saying it's like 50-50, which I thought was interesting. And Vilma says indies, but I think traditional are just catching up. So and I'm assuming that Janet Nye is talking about the cover for
yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So everybody's saying that they love that cover. So that's great.
Your cover,
including our friend Carolyn Hector Hall.
Hey, Carolyn.
Hey.
So, and it was somebody who just mentioned about, okay. Oh, Laura has a good comment. She says, all the comments are great. I'm just saying, she had a great idea of tweet the publishers, let them know what we want.
It's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Great idea.
Hopefully they listen.
Oh, and Sasha makes a good point, Sasha Devlin. I think trad publishing is stuck with those ages because a lot of Romance Landia is still stuck on the HEA has to involve babies and marriage. That's a really, really good point. And, you know, the fact that, you know, is like this whole childbearing thing and you just, you know, whatever. So you can take it either way. Like, for instance, this book, Candidly Yours, that I did earlier this year, it is my first heroine. It's actually 40 that I wrote. She's 39 at the time and she turns 40. And, well, you know, I don't want to spoil too much. But anyway, she does want a family. And so, you know, even though she is older, she wants family. But everybody doesn't want a family, even if you could be in your 20s and not want
a family. Exactly.
You know, and that should be okay too. So, but yeah, I have had a book at the end where I don't have like a wedding or a baby, and people are like, "What's up?" You know. So I get that. That's a excellent point.
But can I make a point on that? Think about modern technology, medicine. Women are having babies later in life. So I do understand that argument, but that's really limited on the publisher's part too, to not acknowledge the fact that women are bearing children in their 40s. You know, so that's not a good ledge to park on and say, well, the reason why we're going to keep these heroines under the age of 30 and the 20s is because we want them to be able to have babies and get married. Give me a break. Women are having babies in their 40s and even some in their 50s. So we still have to argue that mentality.
Yeah.
It also leaves out things like adoption. It leaves out grandparents who are now having to deal with grandkids, that they may be the guardians and doing that. Because I'm gonna mention a little bit later about a book I recently read, and it was the grandparents, and they had the little kids. It was their grandkids, and you know they were raising them, and that you know that happens, and it's good to have those types of books as well. So it's not just the traditional family or the traditional way or the traditional ages. It's much, much bigger, blended families and all those things that should be included in the HEAs.
Yes, I would absolutely agree. You know, representing all the different kinds of ways that people find happiness, you know, not just this one way. Oh, interesting. Linda says, in response, I guess, earlier what I said about women's fiction and thinking I had to tone it down or whatever. She said that's weird because male authors don't have to tone it down for fiction. So,
wow.
Yeah, there's always those double standards, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, and this is interesting. So, Vilma Aiken says, at 56, I don't need to. I don't need to read about people my age, but I definitely appreciate the ones who do it well. And then there was another.
Reese. Oh no.
We must carry on in her absence.
Exactly, right?
Who did it? Who just clicked her off there?
Oh my God.
Take it over.
Let's read Vilma's comment. At 56, I don't need to read about people my age, but I definitely appreciate the ones who do it well. I recommended one author, L.B. Dunbar, but there are not enough. I love the middle-aged romances.
Vilma, you've got to join Seasoned Romance Group and Romance in Her Prime. You've got lots and lots of titles.
Yes.
We've got lots in all those ages, and L.B. Dunbar is in both groups. So we have lots going on. If you're looking for those books, that's why we have the groups. It's because we collect them and we share them, and you won't run out of any of those ages to read from. Trust me, with lots and lots of authors, lots and lots of books. And we got you covered.
Hop in those groups.
You know,
she's back.
She's back. Like, we love Reese chaos, and it's so funny because I popped out and I popped right back in, and I meant to say in the beginning that my internet has been acting funky for like the last week.
It has.
Yeah.
You're not syncing.
It's really been funky. So I meant to say that from the top of the show in case something happens. Just carry on.
We
But y'all
got
did it.
We
And
did.
then
We
I
carried
really
right
didn't
on.
get back on. I forgot
We're
to add
done
myself
with
to
Miss
the screen.
Bellman.
So I'm like listening to y'all and talking like y'all can hear me. And then I realized I wasn't in the stream. So I'm here. So, and Mama Tony says, put those group names in the chat, please. I think that
Yes,
definitely
we
we
need
can
to
do
do
that.
that.
Definitely we can do that. So, Lisa, make sure you pop yours in the chat, and Karen yours. But I think that
Yeah.
I put the links to the groups in the description to the show. So if you look at the show
Okay.
description, you'll have the website for each of the authors. You will have the book to buy the latest book, and which we're going to talk about some of them, and as well as any groups. So I think I did that. So if not, but just the same, to make it easy for everybody, you can put it right there. So that's good to know. And thank y'all for carrying on. Appreciate that. So I appreciate
Listen, that's
that.
what happens when you're seasoned. You just go ahead and do it,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. That's what you do. So my next question for everybody, including the readers, is what do you call romance that has older characters? So because there's different terms for it and stuff, and so we're gonna go around. Just tell me what you call romance with older people. So I'm gonna start with Lisa this time.
Oh, gee. Good question. I've seen all of those.
What's your preferred
That's very
term?
good.
Let me put it that way.
My
What is your preferred
preferred.
term that you normally use?
I actually don't use a term. It's just so, oh my goodness. I'm so used to, okay, so I'm big with my hashtag, and when I'm on my social media, so I have them on all the different ones under Romance in Her Prime, and I'll just use hashtag Romance in Her Prime, hashtag heroines 30 and up. So that's what I'm used to calling them. But I've seen all of them, and it depends. If I'm tweeting somebody else's and they've used a term, like let's say yours was this YouTube channel, I would use hashtag grown folks romance. Or if it's Karen's group, I put hashtag seasoned romance. I would use mature romance. I don't have a particular favorite, but I will use
a specific preference. Okay. So Karen, I already know what your group is names. Is that what your preference is to call older romance or romance with older characters?
It depends on who I'm talking to.
Okay.
if a lot of times I'll just say it's romance with characters that are over. Seasoned romance is not my term. It's Margaret Etheridge, aka Maggie Wells' term. And her whole thing when we decided to start the seasoned romance group on Facebook, we were just sort of like, we're talking about ages, which we talked a little bit about at the very beginning we were like, how do we define this? New adult was so narrow, and this is a much broader thing.
Mm-hmm.
And because we didn't really want to put a number on it, we did eventually because people kept asking us. But Margaret said she used the word seasoned because it's not just about age, it's also about experience. You could have someone who's 30 who's been through a lot, who could be far more seasoned and grown up than a 50-year-old who has been sheltered their whole life or had everything go well for them.
Right.
So that was part of the, but I mix it up all the time. I like that there's a BISAC code, love later in life is fine.
Yeah,
I mean, I mix it up.
I love it. Okay. And Suzette, do you have a preference in what you call romance with older characters?
I actually use the hashtag grown folks romance. I also use hashtag grown and sexy.
Okay. I love it. I use grown folks romance, but I love the grown and sexy. I'm definitely borrowing that one. Definitely borrowing that one. Okay. And Cheryl?
I typically use the grown folks romance too, but I have used seasoned sometime, but most time it's grown folks romance.
Yeah.
But I might have to just talk to my sister and be like, girl, can I borrow that grown and sexy thing?
Let's make it a movement.
Okay. Really seeing me use that one in addition. So from our comments, Sarah says she likes adult contemporary romance. Mama Tony said romance is romance is romance. Linda Culberson says, I like seasoned romance because it doesn't imply age, but a breadth of life experiences. That's more important to me, which is kind of what you just talked about, Karen. So, and Caitlin says, older romance is what I call it. Somebody said, don't mention Haglit.
Oh,
no.
Not happening.
yeah, we're gonna skip
Nope.
that one, I think.
Oh, and Jan, this is funny. She said, "This is your grandmother's romance."
Right.
My gosh.
That's funny.
That is good. I like that.
Yes, because I am a grandma for sure.
That's right. So am I.
So that is funny. So it's just like with the whole thing with middle age. I hate that term so much, but I haven't been able to think of a better term. So if you all as viewers have a better term for middle age, I'd love to hear it because I cannot stand
I love the name of Lisa's group. I love the idea of being prime.
I like that too. I like that as well.
My prime,
Yeah, I love that.
That may or may not be true, but I'll
Let's take that one and go with it. Right.
Exactly.
I like that too. I'm with Carolyn. I love that. So yeah, I think I'm gonna ride with that one. So, so how can the publishing industry do better when it comes to offering representation in romance to more mature readers? That's a pretty obvious.
Contract the books with characters who are older.
Right.
Offer the contract for it. Simple.
Yeah. And not just some old daddy.
I would just add, I would add having them really try to reach out to the readers and to their market and just really kind of, tap into. There are readers who I remember there was a Huffington Post article, I think it was last year, and she was writing, she said, I'm in my 50s, I can't find any books that they're over 20. And so it means there's a disconnect. They're not letting the readers know that this exists. So I think that the market is there. It's just they, as publishers, they would have that ability and the means to tap into it if they choose to. So I think they need to just not always focus in on, like I said, the literary agents, the authors, all that level, and go beyond that to really reaching out to the readers. And I think they will find their market and be able to, say, hey, we're listening to the authors now because we're seeing all these readers. Yeah, they want these books. If we can get that to them, and that's where publishers do well.
I think covers are super important just because they say so much to the reader. And so this whole business of putting 45-year-old characters in the book, but let's put some 20-somethings on the cover.
It's like the thing with the curvy girls. We say the whole book. I'm saying she curvy, right? And somebody who had me, that's cool. That's not who I wrote.
Sure.
It's
one more thing I'm going to say, because of my group, I do look for these books. So I do go through them, scrolling through stuff in groups. I'm going through everywhere. A lot of times publishers or even sometimes authors will not put the woman's age on the blurb or anywhere easy to find. It's almost like it's hidden. And it's like, please don't hide that. She's older. Please, just put that somewhere. But I did know somebody, wrote, it's quite a popular trilogy, and the heroine is 40. I said, well, why didn't you? I said, there was a free book one. That's how I caught on to it. But I said, why didn't you put that her age was 40? She goes, my publisher, which was traditional, told me not to because it would turn off readers. So do not ever put the age in the blurb or any description of it. It's almost like they want to trick you. You buy the book and then like, oh, she's older. I'm like,
wow,
it's crazy.
See, it's making me all throat punchy again. So I'm just gonna move on from that. So I think I'm gonna mix it up a little bit, because I'm gonna ask for recommendations from readers, but also from you guys, of authors who write mature characters, or a particular book maybe or series that had mature characters that you would recommend. So for viewers, you can start throwing in your recommendations, and I'm going to ask you all, but I'm going to ask you all first to tell me about one of your books or whatever book you would like to talk about that has mature characters that you want to tell us about. Then you can give me your recommendation for a book. So I'm going to start with Karen.
Okay.
Tell me about your book with mature characters, and then give me your recommendation.
So my September book, it's right. I can never do the camera.
I know, right?
Okay. Once Forbidden, Twice Tempted. That's the first book in a new trilogy called The Sterling Wives. It's about 3 women who were all at one time, but not the same time, married to the same man. He dies at the beginning of the first book. Spoiler alert. And the 3 wives are kind of thrown into this very unconventional sisterhood. So in book 1, the heroine is 39 and the hero is 40. And he was her ex-husband's best friend. And they knew each other from when they were in their mid-20s. And he always had a thing for her, even after they got divorced. But his best friend was always like, no, you can't go there. So yeah, that's but that whole series, all of the characters are in their mid-30s or later. And it's September, October, November. So it's a pretty quick succession of books. Each wife gets her own book.
Yes. And don't forget Gray Hair Don't Care.
Yes. That comes out in February. I don't have the cover though. The cover is awesome.
It is an illustrated cover. It's the first one I've ever seen with characters who are older. So.
Right. And I mean, and I put her age as the second word in the blurb, I think. And
look, I'm going to leave the screen. I did not disappear, so carry on.
Okay.
So what is your recommendation?
Well, my recommendation is you, Smarty Pants. Because Reese's whole Bourbon Brothers series, and there are more books to come, yes?
Yes.
It's just fabulous. It's just Ryan deliciousness. And so, yeah. And all the characters are older.
Yes, they are all 30 plus. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
All right. And so next, let's go with Cheryl. Tell us about a book of yours and a recommendation of yours.
Ooh, let's start with the recommendation. As easy as just Suzette's book, because that's probably the only one that I've read this year. I think with my writing schedule, I don't get to read as much. So that book is amazing. So I would just
I'm going to buy it.
Read it.
Yeah.
And then for my own, my latest here is actually with a collaboration with Delaney Diamond and Sharon Cooper. It's called Irresistible Husband series. And these are all guys who are around 40 who are never been married. But my heroine is 36 and she's a psychologist and she's had a kind of tough background. So she's not really looking for love, but yeah. So it's talks about these women who are in their mid-30s and the trouble they have finding men, because she has a couple of friends in there who are the same age. But yeah. So It's a good series too. Awesome. Grown folks love, grown and sexy. Yeah, those words.
Well,
like it.
I love it.
Good.
And thank you, Vilma. Appreciate it. And then let's see, Suzette. Tell us about your book, and then tell us your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. My book again is This Time Always. And it features a 54-year-old woman who is a widow, mother of 2 college-age children, and now is an empty nester. And she's living with alopecia, but hasn't fully embraced that yet. So she still has the camouflage of wigs and the mink eyelashes and the powdered brows. So the book is really her, as her mother says, her coming out journey. And just so happens that her hero interest, her love interest, is her daughter's college professor. They actually meet on, yeah, exactly.
Nice. I like that.
You like that? They actually meet on the day of her daughter's graduation. Now he is 7 years younger. His name is Omari, is 7 years younger. And it wasn't intentional, I want to be salacious and let's do a cougar romance. That's just the way it was. And he's actually a grandfather. So he's younger than her, but he already has a granddaughter. So it's interesting love that they'll experience that they're going to have. And earlier we're talking about some people saying that they don't want to read older books because they lack conflict. I say it's not that we lack conflict. We may not have the high drama that young people want, or an intense drama and foolishness, but we still have conflict. So let's not get that twisted. As far as recommendations for writers who write seasoned and grown folks romance, W. Parks Brigham, she writes nothing. Practically nothing
all of her
but seasoned
that's right.
characters. And not only seasoned characters, I love that she writes full-figured, curvy, plus-size women as well. So she's definitely not walking that straight and narrow line that the traditional publishing houses have set for us.
Yes.
Right.
I love
Agreed.
I love that. Before I step into Lisa's, I'm going to pop in some of the reader recommendations. Linda Culberson says Roxanne St. Clair. And then Sharice Sinclair, this is who I am. Caitlin says your Sterling Wise books are awesome.
Oh, thank you.
And B. Marquette, we're so excited you were able to catch the live too. So thank you for joining us. And okay, and so Lisa, tell us about your recommendation.
Okay. Talking about covers, I'm just going to start off with that a little bit. Talking about covers, it's so rare to see women on the cover, but if you do, they usually have their back turned to us. So I am going to show you a cover, a series that all the covers so far have a woman facing forward, and that's Maggie Christensen. It was new, I think, as of this year. Oops, I'm doing that too. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so all the covers, she's up to book 6. They all have a different woman. She's on her own. They're looking in different direction, but always forward. And it's just their like a portrait shot. And I thought that's so cool because with romance, we don't see that anymore. If you do see a single person, it's the guy. It's them a couple, or like I said, it's often the back of the woman, which I'm totally fine with because it looks like they're going somewhere. But that caught my eye with that series. So I did a little research.
Oh boy.
I'm like, I am hitting them. Okay, I'm hitting them hard. I'm not an author here. I would love to have any of you and all of you come read in my group because we do live readings most weeknights. Anytime, let me know.
They're good.
Has done it
They're
before.
really good.
It's super fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I try to split it up to 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and the 70s. I do have one. I did a reading of that one. And then generational ones. I'm going to mention them really quickly. I'm doing this for the people who are watching. Somebody said, yay, Maggie Christensen. Okay. So we had Boracay Vows. It's from the Carpe Diem Chronicles. It's by Maida Malby. She writes them set in Singapore with Filipino and multicultural characters. That one, Krista turns 30, so she spends much of her time like, I'm going to turn 30. What do I have to get done before I turn this? And she does. She has her birthday party. We have Rebecca Roman. All of her characters are 30 and up. She does romantic suspense, again, multicultural. They're often Black, African-American, Hispanic, and can be set in a few different places internationally. Her last one was Love on High Steel Bridge, which was a drama. So those are in the 30s. 40s, I've got Edge of Tomorrow, which was brand new by Freya Barker. She writes 30s and 40s. She doesn't write anything under. But Edge of Tomorrow, why I want to bring that up, that was interracial. Lisa's 46. She's African-American, and she's a grandmother. Her daughter died of an overdose, so she is taking care of her 2 grandkids. And then Brick is the hero, and he's an ex-con. He's not your usual. He's estranged from his daughter. There's a whole story with that. It's a part of a great series. So she's 46. Then we have It's Not PMS, It's You. So I'm throwing in a male romance author. He does an excellent job. That's hilarious. You really want to do. She's 45 or 46. I can't remember. And all he writes are 30 and up, and I definitely recommend. Then for 50s, I have Maggie Christensen's, as I mentioned. Hers actually runs from 49 to 62. So a few in the middle are in their 50s, but she has a range of ages. And it's called Granite Spring Series. And, okay, let's see. And then 60s, I have one I discovered last night. I did the reading with Silver Blessings. That's new as of yesterday. It's number 3 in the Silver Fox series. all the covers are an older couples, and they're all 60s and might be 70s. So that there's nobody even younger than 60s. So it's 3 books so far. So I wanted to bring that. And it's by Susan Warner. And then the multi-generationals, which I think are actually quite helpful. I would Marie Force's Gansett Island. You've got everything from the 20s to the 60s. You've got couples all the ages in between, and that's like she's got I don't know, almost 20 or something books. Donald McDonald, her series Never Too Late and The Perfect Date. Again, one I think is in the 20s, but everything is up to 30s, 40s, 50s, with both of them having one of the women in their 60s. I think one was 67 and one was 62, meeting with somebody. Then I wanted to throw in, because of Romance in Her Prime, an older woman and a younger man. I have 2 of those that I really recommend. The Navigator by Phoebe Alexander. It's part of number 5 in her Mountain series. Dr. Anjuli, she is 42 and she's East Indian. She's a doctor. And then Garrett, her love interest is 32. And then there is The Hotspot by Neobia Bryant. And in that one, it's I can't remember what number. It's in the Strong Brothers series. Zaria is 42 and Caleb is 29. And then I did say there was one in the 70s. So yes. Courtney Milan, you may have heard that author. She wrote an FF romance called Mrs. Martin's Incomparable Adventure. Bertrice is 73 and Violetta is 69. In this one, they basically come out at that age for the first time. So I thought that was really good. So those are my recommendations.
I love that you broke it out into the different age ranges. In case people are looking for specific ages. Okay, awesome. So, and then Caitlin mentioned that she would also like to see more covers with just the woman.
Thank you.
On the cover.
I agree.
And hopefully Harlequin will do more covers like that. I cannot think of a single one that Harlequin has done. I've seen just the men on it, but I've never. So yeah, that's a nice challenge to throw out there, Caitlin. I like that. And then Karen says Donna McDonald has a series of books about older women.
True.
And then
Never Too Late and The Perfect Date. Yeah.
And then my recommendations I'm going to throw out there are I'm going to mention first of all my book. With the older heroine, Candidly Yours. I love that story so much. And he's younger. He's 10 years younger than she is. But I want to recommend Delaney Diamond, who I wanted to join us so badly, but she's a little camera shy. So Delaney Diamond has tons of stories with older characters, and also
including one called Seasoned.
Right. Also has lots of stories that have characters, 30 and up. So lots of authors out there. And then I had put the question out there for readers to answer. Got lots of different recommendations from people. Karen, you came up several times as well. Somebody also mentioned Bounce Back by Quanah M. Jackson.
Oh, yep.
Because, and they said that's a 2-for-1 because it's 2 relationships, one's a married couple. And there's A Very Wicked Christmas by Shayla Black. Somebody mentioned, I think somebody says that Family Blessings by is it Laverne Spencer?
Yep.
Is also one that has a much older woman and a younger man as well. So if you follow me on Twitter or Facebook, you'll see where I've asked that question and you'll see lots of recommendations.
Excellent.
I would love to eventually put together a list, and I'm going to try to do that. But I still already owe y'all a list from Diverse Small Town Romance. As you know, I got a lot of books due. So when I get a chance, then I will do that. So all of you have already I kind of mixed it up a little bit and asked you about your books or whatever. Do you have if you haven't already mentioned a book that's coming out, like I already threw out Karen's Gray Hair Don't Care. Tell us what is coming next for you. And I will start with Cheryl.
Next is going to be book 2 in the Sassy Season Sisters, and it's called Love, Sweet Surrender. And if you've read the first book with Love, Sweet Kiss, you will know that Maxie was the most outspoken one. So her book is up next. Ooh. And just FYI, her journey is not easy as Nzinga and Byron's. Hers is not straightforward, sweet, cute. It's going to have a little bit more to it. And hopefully the end of next month.
Nice, nice. Laura Hawkins says, I saw all the wonderful recommendations on Twitter. Good. I'm glad you saw those. Um, and Summer Reeds mentioned Alexandria House's Them Boys series. The first two heroines are in their 40s. Oh, there's the lady. Hello, Delaney. I'm
Hi,
watching
Delaney.
so thank you so much.
That we recommend season.
Awesome. And then Karen B asks Suzette, what's the title of the story with the woman who has alopecia?
This time, always.
And the link to it is, I'm almost positive. The link to it is in the description for the show. Underneath Suzette, you'll see Suzette's website, and then there should be the link to buy her book as well. And Tracy Hale says, yes, I've been waiting on Maxie. So,
Yes, I know.
so okay, awesome. Okay, so I asked
know.
Carol.
She's coming.
So Suzette, did I ask you what's next for you?
No, ma'am. Next is a dual timeline story that was acquired by a publisher in the UK, believe it or not, and that will come out in February. So it's a dual timeline in that you have two characters. One is in 1955, and she's actually on the bus when Rosa Parks gets on the bus, and that whole incident occurs. And then that character has a granddaughter. We'll see her granddaughter contemporary time, and it goes back and forth between the two time periods.
Oh, nice.
No title as of yet, so I can't even tell you what it's called. So
that
sounds good.
When do you anticipate that?
That will be out February 8th of 2020. Excuse me, 2021.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Karen, I hit your book already, but you want to talk about anything else?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I already talked about the Sterling Wives. The second book comes out October 1st. The third book comes out November 1st. Then I collapse. Don't put out.
Right.
And then Gray Hair Don't Care comes out in February, and I'm super, super excited about that book.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Karen found your book on Amazon, so that's fantastic. If you all yay!
Thank you. Hey, Wanda. Hey, Miss
Wanda's there. Wanda's here. Okay, awesome. She said,
Oh,
thank you so much. Sending lots of love. I'm glad. Yay! Thank you. She quietly out there, her and Delaney. So, and if you have any questions for any of our guests, make sure you pop them in the Q&A because we're wrapping up. And so let me see, who did I not get? I think I got all of the authors.
I have a little something coming up. I'm
gonna get to you in a minute.
Okay.
But so I think I got to I hit Karen. Yep. Okay. And then for me, the next thing coming out that would be an older romance or in a prime romance would be in December. Second Chance on Cypress Lane, which is my first book in the new Holly Grove Island series. And he is 36 and she is 34. So yeah. Okay. And so Lisa, briefly tell us what you got coming up next.
Okay. So with the group, last month I started for the first time. I did a ageism and the romance heroine panel. So it's the first one for our group.
Oh yes, I'm glad you brought that up because I was gonna bring that up. I gotta know about that. Go ahead.
So speaking about that, so we had a panel, we had 6 authors. It was a fun time. And so we're looking to do it. I'm now thinking I'm going to maybe do this regularly. So for October, we're looking to have indie versus traditional publishing and to have a different group of authors, hopefully some that are indie published, some are traditional, some that are hybrid, and discussing that and how the romance heroine's age is, determined by those 2 factors. So that's what's coming up.
That was a really good panel, and I'm so because I had a note for myself to mention that it was on ageism in romance, and it had Nalena Kai and Maggie Wells was on it. It was
Natasha Moore, Maida Malby, Sandra Antonelli.
Yep, excellent, and it's still available right in the group. If people join in her prime, you can see that. That's a really, really, really good panel on ageism in romance. So highly, highly recommend that, especially if you're interested in this topic already. And maybe you're an author who would be a good fit for a future panel that Lisa is doing in her group, as well as she mentioned earlier that she's always looking for authors who write older heroines to come and do readings in her group. Adult story time. We love it. We love it. So that is wonderful. So I had asked the readers if they had any questions, and Linda Culberson says, "What advice do you have for a new writer with a seasoned story?" And who wants to start there?
Well, it depends on if you want to indie publish it or go the traditional route. I think it depends on your goals. But otherwise, the path is the same, unfortunately, which is querying and trying to get through that whole process, or just leaving all that behind and doing it on your own. That's the cool thing about these reader groups, is that you do have a direct, I'm 52. I can't think of words anymore. You have a direct path to readers, and you don't always have that. So,
Right.
But it really depends on your goals. I think in general, most publishers are okay with older characters. They just don't want it to be they don't want it to be front and center. And that's the part I take issue with. So it really depends on what you want.
Yeah. And I would also say, whatever you want to write, you want to read lots of it too. So, okay. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
No.
I was just going to say, with all the groups I see, I do see a lot of authors supporting other authors. So you can go into their groups on Facebook and other ones. I know there's like indie author support. There are other groups where there's a bunch of authors all helping out. So you have questions about covers, you have questions about the blurb, you have questions about the pricing. I would join an authors group, and then you've got other authors to kind of, chat with and talk to, and as well as start your own social media and get that started even before your book starts. Start reaching out and see if you can start build up a reader base as you are doing it. Like, bring them along the process. Hi, I'm starting this. This is possible covers. These are possible characters' names. These are, this is my WIP, and this is a quote from it. Here's an excerpt. And you're kind of building up the people who are, in the end, are going to say, hey, I got to have this. When are you selling this? So kind of work on the marketing and the sales as you're working along, you're writing the book. So my recommendation. Not that I'm an author. I've never written, I've never published, but hey.
Great advice.
Okay, so for each of you, and like I said, and for readers, I did, in fact, first of all, please, if you enjoyed the show, please like, and if you haven't before, subscribe, and then share the show. But if I did put in the description the website for each of the guests today. So if you're looking for that, you'll find it there. But for each of you, just tell us, how you'd like to connect with readers. Let's start with Cheryl.
Okay, I'm on Facebook under author Cheryl Lister, on Instagram under Cheryl Lister, and I have a reader group called Cheryl's Sweet Spot on Facebook. So you can pop in there and join in and have a good time.
Awesome. Karen?
My website is karenbooth.net. I'm also on Facebook. I have a reader group called Backstage Antics with Karen. And then, I'm on Twitter. I fully admit I talk way too much about politics on Twitter, so you can mute me or not following me there at all. And I'm on Instagram, Karen B. Booth. That's where to find me.
Awesome. Suzette?
Seasoned romance group.
Seasoned romance group.
Suzette
D. Harrison. On Facebook, Suzette D. Harrison, and then website is SDH Books, and I'm on Instagram, Suzette Harrison. I think it's 2200. I'm on Twitter, but I am not a Twitter fan. I don't even know how to use Twitter, so don't look for me there. Come find me on Facebook.
Oh, yes.
So for me, you can find me on Facebook. I've got a private group and a page. They're both under, the page is just Romance in a Prime. And then it's facebook.com/group/Romance in a Prime for the private group. You can find me on Twitter, but it's at Romance in Prime because they have a limit on the names, on the number of characters, so it's at Romance in Prime. I'm also on Instagram at Romance in Her Prime, so you can find me there. And then if any authors out there who'd like to join in, I also have another group called, it's facebook.com/group/RIHP authors.
Oh, okay.
Awesome. That's good to know. And B Marquette asked, was DL White mentioned? I think she has a 40+ character in one of her books. Thank you for bringing up DL. We love DL. And so thank you for bringing that that recommendation up as well. So I think that's pretty much all that I can think of. Anything else that any of you wanted to add at all to the discussion? Or did we pretty much cover everything?
I think we got it all.
I think you
the
did.
bottom
So
line is we all
Thank
grown
you.
folks now. We're not babies no more.
Yeah.
We want to read about other grown folks. So
We like some
publishers,
grown folks
get
stuff.
it together, okay? Quit playing. All right? Quit taking grown folks' money and telling them they can only read about kids. I'm talking to all of
Exactly.
y'all right now.
One
Okay.
last thing I want to say is I do think the next big, Karen mentioned that once a book blows up, like we know the one in, that trilogy that kind of opened the new adult market. I do think that we're really maybe this close to tapping into this mature market where we'll start seeing titles and we'll have that one big, one that just, hey, and they'll be like traditional, everybody discovers and starts racing in. We got to write these mature romances, but we'll already be here, already have established readers.
Yeah.
So I think we're on that, that early adopters level. So I think, as everybody else discovers it and joins in, we'll be like, we got this covered. So thank you for having me.
That's another thing. Another thing I would say is for all of you, is for everybody who's a reader who wants to read more, grown folks, seasoned romance, don't rely on traditional publishers to do it for you. I mean, there are definitely lots of books being published by traditional publishers. We've named several of them. But if you there's a particular author you like who writes lots of romances with older characters, make sure that you follow them like on social media and definitely their mailing list, their email list, because they might write for more publishers than you know. Like if you're only a Harlequin reader, they might write for 2 other publishers, or they might have an entire indie line that they have of stuff. So if you want to make sure that you're getting all of their stories, their older folk stories, make sure that you follow them and join their mailing list so that you'll know whenever anything comes up with theirs, not just maybe the publisher that you first discovered them. So thank you to all of you for joining us. I really appreciate you. I appreciate all of the people who came and watched and participated and made this discussion so much fun. So I'm going to say bye to y'all one by one. Thank you so much, Suzette and Karen. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Cheryl. And if you weren't here in the beginning, when I said who I'm going to have in my next show, first of all, I won't be here next week. I'll be writing on lockdown. But the week after that, in 2 weeks, I will be talking to the amazing Brenda Jackson. We're going to be talking about her story 25-year career as a romance author. She'll be sharing highlights of her career, challenges, giving advice for writers. So any writers who are looking for advice, including me, on how we can have some longevity in our careers, definitely do that. Come on back and absolutely, I want readers to ask Ms. Jackson whatever questions they have for her. So you can go and look at the show and hit the reminder bell so you won't forget it in 2 weeks. And if you have questions that you want her to answer, you can actually pop them in the comments right there, and I will make sure that we address those questions during the show. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and appreciate you so much for being here and for making the show so much fun. So I'll see you on the next live stream.